Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Creative Real Estate Investing. This is Module 1, Lesson 1, and we're going to get started with a PowerPoint presentation for Lesson 1. So let's jump right in here. In Module 1, we're going to have 3 lessons. The first lesson that we're covering here today is called Mindset. Lesson 2 will then talk about the language that we use and the beliefs that we have with respect to creative real estate. Lesson 3, and how to actually start getting creative. So let's ask this question. Are you actually creative? What do you think? Well, to help you decide, do you tend to follow the rules? Do you like to color inside the lines? Are you the type of person who hates to hear no and be rejected? And do you find yourself frequently saying words like, I can't, or I don't know how to do that? If this sounds like you, you're therefore not creative. And this is what most people believe. But the reality is, you're wrong. So think back to when you were a little kid. Remember when you were running around the house, maybe as a 5 or 6-year-old, pretending to fly an airplane, and you got your wings spread out there and you could feel the wind blowing in your face? Or maybe you were a rock star, standing on your bed, jumping and singing to a massive crowd of people out there. Or perhaps you wanted to be that famous ballerina. Or just simply be the superhero. We all had these times in our lives when we were all dreaming of being and doing whatever it was we wanted in our lives in the future. So the reality is you can be creative. What's happened is over the years we've had the creative stuffing knocked out of us by society, especially when you get into school and you're forced to conform to the rules and sit quietly in a classroom, focus to what the teacher is saying. And you actually get punished for believing or daydreaming and believing that you could do whatever it is you want to have. So over time, we tend to lose that creative skill set. We don't actually lose it. It becomes suppressed. So I'd actually like to share with you some proof at just how creative you actually are. Because I think that everybody will agree that at a certain point in time, you worry. Now, if you worry, all that is imagining something bad will happen in the future. The key word there is imagining, because it hasn't happened yet. So if it hasn't happened yet, what you're doing is you're making it up in your mind. Therefore, you can be very creative. You just need to learn to be creative in the right format. So what is creative real estate actually? Well, I think buying a property with none of your own money, that could be considered creative. Or flipping a house without actually owning it. Perhaps controlling a property with no money. Or buying as many properties as you want. I think these are all creative strategies. Or are these just the results of creative thinking? So a slight difference there. So if it's creative thinking, what actually is creative thinking? That's what we're going to figure out now. So let's set the stage here. We're going to create the mental environment and build a strong foundation so that you can start becoming creative. Keep in mind that your only limitations are those that you put upon yourself. The only thing holding you back from doing anything is you yourself. The restraints that you put on yourself. That little voice you hear in your head, that's an imaginary voice inside your head. So Albert Einstein has this quote, "Imagination is more important than knowledge. For knowledge is limited, whereas imagination embraces the entire world, stimulating progress, giving birth to evolution." So the bottom line there is that there's no limitation to your imagination, whereas knowledge, it does have limitation. So I looked up the definition of being creative, and this is what I came up with. Creativity is a mental process involving the discovery of new ideas or concepts, or new associations of the existing ideas or concepts, fueled by the process of either conscious or unconscious insight. Now I see two parts to this definition. The first part is the discovery of new ideas or concepts. And the second part is the existing ideas or concepts with conscious and unconscious insight. So let's take a look at the first part. The first part is the discovery of new ideas or concepts. Well, this is simply just another way of saying that you need to learn new ideas and techniques which you can then use in your investing. So that's the discovery of new ideas. So that's absolutely true, and that's where we're looking at, building your toolbox with some new tools, going from just a couple of saw and a hammer to having a whole set of tools. That's what we're talking about here, is building that toolbox bigger, more complete. Then we have the second part. The second part is new associations of the existing ideas or concepts fueled by the process of either conscious or unconscious insight. So what we're talking about here is how to apply what we already know either consciously or unconsciously. So sometimes we have the conscious insight to come up with a new idea, and other times it's our unconscious or our subconscious that comes up with the new ideas. Now, here's the challenge, that we are often stuck in how we think based upon our current beliefs, or believing that our perception of things is correct and or the only way of looking at things, so we get stuck. So in this lesson, are we going to look at the discovery of new ideas or concepts, which includes the techniques and tools? Not today. That's going to be for another lesson. What we're going to do is we're going to focus on the second part in today's lesson, where we're looking at new associations of existing ideas or concepts fueled by the process of either conscious or unconscious insight, and how to apply what we are, in other words, how to apply what we already know either consciously or unconsciously. And this is all about your mindset. So mindset, when we're talking about our mindset, we're actually talking about the paradigms that we have in our minds and our beliefs. And a paradigm is the acceptance of a belief or an attitude or a way of doing things. So there's a story about a young girl's watching his mother roast or cook a roast in the oven, and the mother very carefully takes a slice off each end of the roast and then places it in the roast pan, covers it all up, and places it in the oven. And the little girl asks her mother, "Why do you cut the ends off the roast?" And the mother stops for a second. She thinks, "Well, I don't know. My mother always did that, so that's how I do it." So they decided to ask the grandmother. So they asked the grandmother, and the grandmother said, "Oh, well, what happened was the roast I bought one time was too big for the roast pan, so I had to cut the ends off, and so it would fit in the roast pan." And it just became a belief that's how you actually cooked the roast. So it stuck for generations. That's what happens, is we get these ideas or these beliefs and we get stuck with them, and those become our paradigms. So the paradigm is also the way we see the problem. Actually, the way we see the problem may actually be the problem itself. So here's a perfect example. Here we have a picture. Now when you study this picture very carefully, just, what do you actually see in this picture? And I'm going to leave it up here for a quick second, just so you can study that. All right, so you've taken a look at the picture, so now you've got a perspective of what you see. So here it is again. Perhaps you saw a young, beautiful woman with a petite nose looking to her right. So there's the petite nose. Or others might see an old woman with a large nose looking down. The question is, who is correct? The reality is both are correct. Your perception is your reality, but does this mean your perception is right or that it is the only option? Very often, you can have several perceptions of the same problem, the same opportunity, and they're all correct. They may not be the one that you have or that you share with somebody else, but that doesn't mean that yours is right and the other person's is wrong. It just means that yours is different. So what you want to do is open your mind up to new possibilities. Actually challenge yourself and start looking every time you see an opportunity and you see an obvious solution or an obvious answer. Ask yourself, are there any other opportunities here? Any other options I should be looking at as well? Then we're going to take a look at the context versus content. So here we have a picture of a glass which is going to represent your context, and the liquid being poured into it is the content. Well, you can only pour so much liquid into that glass of context before it overflows. So if you have a very small context, you're going to have a very limited amount of content. So the person's context will determine their interpretation, their understanding, and acceptance of an event, fact, or idea. So that's the content that's going in. So therefore, if you have a small context, you're going to have very limiting views and options. A large context will allow you to be much more open to newer ideas and concepts and unlimited options. So for example, a person's context will include things such as their philosophies and their beliefs, the thoughts that they currently have, the rules that they follow, the values they live by, as well as the fears that control them, their own personal doubts and their attitudes, and the choices that they make. Now, a poor person's context is seen in the words that they use. So, for example, a person with a poor person's context is going to use words such as "I'll never be rich." The rich are bad and greedy people. I'd rather be happy than rich. The government should take care of people. And there's many, many more phrases or words that a person with a poor context use. You know, do you think money grows on trees? Do you think I'm made of money? Who do you think I am, Rockefeller? These are all negative words, very limiting words of a poor person's context. Therefore, they've got a small context with a very limited content. Now, this is very important to realize and understand. This quote by Alvin Toffler: "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." So the key here is being able to unlearn and relearn. And what he's talking about is that life changes so quickly for us. Technology changes so fast for us. Opportunities come and go so quickly. If you have a very set mindset and you're not going to allow new ideas to enter into your mind, and you're going to maintain a small context, then what's going to happen is you're going to have very limited growth. So you have to be willing to unlearn some of your old paradigms, some of your own beliefs, some of your own old values, change them, and relearn the new ones moving forward. So with that in mind, to be able to have more and do more or be more will require that you grow your context and change your beliefs. So let's take a look at the context of the rich, how they talk. Well, I must be rich. It's an expectation. Freedom is more important than security. I take on challenges so I can learn. Actually, that freedom is more important than security. To expand on that one very briefly, a lot of people with jobs consider that to be a secure environment. In reality, the rich people who earn their money not through a job but through investments and multiple sources of income, they see jobs as handcuffs, an anchor. Therefore, their mindset is to be free of the jobs, which is what they're talking about here. Freedom is more important than security with respect to jobs. I take on challenges so I can learn. It's exciting. It's an opportunity. I want to find out how far I can go in life. There's enough for everyone. So they don't have the mindset of scarcity. They have the mindset of abundance. So with this mindset, they're able to expand their mind and allow new ideas and beliefs to enter. They're giving themselves permission to take on new ideas. Therefore, their context will grow, allowing them to absorb or take on more content. So we now know, we need to change. So now we need to figure out how do we change. That's the end of lesson 1. What we're going to do in lesson 2 is going to continue on with this, and we're going to talk and focus on the language that we use as well as the beliefs that we have, followed very quickly then by lesson number 3. Just to remind you that if you do have any questions about this particular lesson, hang on. You're more than welcome to email, but save your questions until we have the live call, so that during the Q&A, the same question may be asked by somebody else, and save yourself the email to me, and if of course after the live call the question still has not been answered, well, you can ask the question yourself on the Q&A, so it's a benefit to everybody on the call. And if it doesn't get answered then and there, you can still email me at ken.beaton@arcarealestate.ca. All right, thank you very much, and we'll see you on lesson number 2.